National Fishermen and Pacific Marine Expo are proud supporters of the Galley Stories podcast, as we make similar efforts to highlight the people and topics that define commercial fishing. You can see what that looks like in print and online all year long, as well as every November in Seattle when this community comes together at PME. Check out nationalfisherman.com and pacificmarineexpo.com to learn more.
Hello and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello guys, welcome to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. Today we have Captain David Vardy with us today. David, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So David, where were you born and what was your first, what got you into the industry?
Well, I was born in Everett, Washington. I think the first time I got into fishing was just asking to go out because my dad fished, and it was just out on a little bow picker in Puget Sound. And went out there. I remember it was kind of late at night. You have no recollection when you're like 4 years old of what you're doing, where you're at, especially when it's dark. But we're out fishing. There's a lot of fish, chums that are heavy, and I remember them being too heavy to pick up. So they're probably pretty big. And I ended up making my way inside of the galley and accidentally locking the door. And I couldn't figure out how to let my dad in. And so I was kind of having a little bit of an episode.
You locked him out of the boat?
I locked him out, and he's trying to explain to me how to open this thing up so I can get it in. But it's not like the door was in perfect shape. It was a fishing boat door, and it had a little bit of wear and tear on it, like most of them do. And so I remember like trying to turn the lock, but it was one of those ones where you push it in, and then it's kind of stuck inside until you turn.
Yeah, the handle.
So instead of trying to turn the handle, I was trying to turn the lock, and eventually I figured it out and let him in. But
how old were you?
I was like 4 or 5. Yeah, and it was in Puget Sound you get mostly all night openers, and it was pitch black. Aside from just the random instrument lighting inside of there, so you're kind of 4-year-old having a bit of a freak out.
And your dad's just like, okay, listen.
Yeah, he's like trying to I guess to the best of his ability get in.
So did you continue to go with him?
I don't really have too many more memories of going out when I was super young like that. Pretty sure he probably didn't want to get locked out again. But I do recall in 1995 I flew up to Bristol Bay for a summertime, and I lived in Igigik with Walt Johnson, actually, and his family. And I was able to get out on the water on a couple boats. I was out on my dad's boat, high octane, during the peak, and that was crazy. I was 10. And then later on in the season, when it slowed down, I went out on the highball with Pete Arnstad. So I have a little bit of, some memories from back then. But they're more, it felt like more of an exploratory experience, It was cool, though.
So in Igigik, were you working at a set net site and then got on the boats, or you were just hanging out?
We were just hanging out, staying for the summer.
Mm.
Yeah, and kind of getting the whole experience. Being a local, it was different. My dad used to fish for Wall back in the 70s, and that's how he got his start fishing up there in Igigik, staying there. He was trying to do winter watchman jobs to get a permit when they were giving them out with like a point system, I think, before limited entry. And he ended up building this friendship with Walt, fishing with him for years before he ended up going from drifting out of a skiff with an outboard to getting onto big drift boat with one of the Arnstads. And he ran that for, I want to say the early 90s until he bought his own boat. And then 2 years later I was up there on his back deck just checking it out, kicking some fish around.
How long did you do that? Very often? You were 10 when you went up that time. Did you continue to go up? That's your primary fishery, right? Or is it your only fishery?
It's really my only fishery now. I used to do Puget Sound, chum, and Togiak herring, but the chums can be, the market can really be frustrating, and so I kind of weeded myself out of that one. And then Togiak, we just completely lost the market up there. But that was a fun fishery.
Let's talk about that.
Let's do
What's
it.
the experience like?
The experience of togiak herring on a gill netter is it's set netting. So you have anchors on both ends of your gill net, and you got to go out there, set it, throw the anchor, start setting it, throw the other anchor on the other end, and you can see the fish in the water, so you kind of want to make sure that you're putting it on there. Then once it sinks, you pick it, and sometimes you'll load the boat. Geez, I think the most we ever did in one day was probably like 8 times. I mean, and you're talking, between 10 and 20 tons sometimes. It's crazy.
Wow.
And it adds up really quick. You're putting in, I mean, I don't know what an average seiner over there in the Trident fleet would typically bring in, but when I was running my own boat, I never caught under 400 tons over there. And, there's just like a week and a half, 2-week seasons.
Just real quick.
Yeah. And then when I was over there with my dad, we had a 500-something ton season one time.
What's the comparison to picking herring versus picking salmon?
Oh, geez, you don't have to do really a whole lot of work picking. You have a shaker, and it just kind of shakes them right out, and then you shovel them into the holds, and then you go and you pump them out with the transvac into the tender. So labor-wise, I still think that there's more labor involved with herring over the salmon, even though you don't have to pick every single one out of the net. The reason for it is, if there's fish around, you're just constantly going. You don't stop. When you take a break, it's because the fish are taking a break.
One net at a time?
Yeah,
Or
I
can you put 2 nets?
think you can have 2 50-fathom shackles separately.
Mhm.
We never had them separately, but I did see a couple other boats do it a few times. Sometimes it just seems like it's more work than benefit. I don't think that I don't want to say risk, because it's not risk. It's just like, if you put your net in the right spot where you can see the fish, and you
You're
don't want to
gonna love
lose your spot either, because it's kind of competitive. So if you pick up your net, sometimes a guy's going to come and he's going to set you down before you can get it back out. So you got to kind of be strategic about where you put it and when you pick it. That way you can maintain your position, and I mean, it's a competitive fishery, even though it's pretty lax, and
Yeah.
there's only about 10 or 15 boats doing it. You carry that same mentality from herring into the salmon fishery, and that's, I think, how you end up having big seasons with either of them.
And then you started going to Bristol Bay.
Yeah.
So when did you start really getting serious about Bristol? Because you're one of the best fishermen up there. Had to develop somehow.
Yeah, well, it started out as a punishment, I'll tell you that. It was just, remember, I was in 6th grade, and I guess I was up to no good, and my mom didn't want to have to deal with that during the summers, so she's like, you're going to go fishing with your dad. And at first, you're like, well, geez, that sounds like a punishment. And so we ended up going up there. First year, I think I was 13 in 1999, first year of actual employment. And it wasn't, it was during the beginning of the fish depression of 99 through 03. You started out with a 75-cent, I think, base price in 99, but pretty small catch, like barely over 100,000 pounds, 100 to 130,000 pounds, being pretty high liner season, as I recall, and not making a lot of money. So it's not really super enjoyable, but it was enough to, buy a bunch of cool stuff when you got home when you're, a young teenager.
I mean, you were 13.
Yeah,
How much was your dad paying you?
I think my first year, I think I made like $8,000.
At 13 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was pretty stoked about it.
It wasn't a bunch of money.
Yeah. They made me invest a bunch of it, so I couldn't just blow it, which is good. And
What was your cool toys? What did you get?
well, you're gonna like this. I actually bought a desk, a computer, and clothes, PlayStation, shit like that. I was kind of into gaming at the time, and so I knew exactly what I wanted. I had, back then we had the catalogs. We could see all the, all the things you wanted, and you could look at them all summer long, and you could kind of base your goal for what you wanted to have, when you got home.
You're doing this shopping at night.
Yeah. No, yeah, I remember one of the other fishermen in our group, Vince Hoiby, he stared at the catalog I was looking at, and he goes, David, we're not making that much money this year. You're going to have to scale down to that one. It costs a little less. And so, I think I still ended up getting the more expensive one.
So at 13,
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
Found out it wasn't exactly punishment. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
did you continue to go every year then?
Yeah. It started to get a little bit more enjoyable every year. And I think by my third year in 2001, I was running the deck, and I had one of my friends who now runs a boat in the bay was alongside me, and he's got the Quinta Marina. That's Chase La Marina. We just two-manned it. You know, we had pretty small seasons, like we were talking about. The price was poor. I remember 40 cents, 42 cents in '01. Maybe that was 2000, but I mean, we're really splitting hairs here. It was bad, and we weren't catching anything. If you had just over 100,000 pounds, you were killing it. At least in Nigigik. I couldn't tell you what the Nushigak was doing back then. It wasn't even in my scope.
Yeah, communication wasn't the same.
No, it wasn't.
Not like it is now.
Yeah, now we know what's going on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You've got group members in every district, and
they're telling you it's hot or not hot. Or,
yeah.
You really can't just run from Igigik to the Nush. It's not a short, not a short jog.
No, and even when we had the free week, they kind of excluded themselves managerially from doing the same thing. It always opened after the free week, if I recall proper. We'd have all the Dillingham boats over in Igigik and Naknek for the early hit before they canceled the language that allowed you to go fishing without dropping your card. I want to say that might have occurred around like 2014, something like that, or 2013. But we used to be able to just go up and down the hill, and we'd get openers in Naknek and openers in Igigik, and you could just go back and forth.
Yeah, that's
same with you
guys. That's a shorter run.
Yeah.
Especially in a faster boat.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, a tender run is 3.5, 4 hours, so I imagine you can make it in a couple?
You could, but at that time, we didn't have fast boats either. I had a really nice Kwijak, and I bought it in 2011, and I fished it in 2012, and it got around pretty good at 11 knots pretty much everywhere, unless you're going against that, strong Nushigak current on the ebb. I mean, I think any keel boat back, at least back then, you were doing just a couple knots against that.
Yeah, if you're moving at all. You're
Yeah.
just trying to hold your spot till the
I remember going over there for pinks, and what was it? Was it 2012? There were even year pinks in the Noosh? I can't even remember. I haven't done it in so long, right? Well, I remember going over there and fishing down at the bottom of flounder, and then at the end of the period, heading back to town. It just took forever. So
you gotta leave the Noosh on the ebb.
Yeah, well, that was just to go up to Clark's Point to deliver, because there's, by that point in time, late July, you've got, not a lot of support around.
Oh no, I'm gone.
Yeah, yeah. You've got, fleet managers are gone pretty much. You've got very few tenders around. You're probably jumping from market to market. I don't even believe I was selling to Trident over there. I think we had to secure someone else, but it was, that was actually my first dip in the Noosh was in 2012. I'd never been there before that, except for in '99 I went over there for King opener, and there was nothing. And I was just, deckhand and not paying attention, had no idea of my surroundings or anything.
You're just working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get back to how you built your way up to your first boat.
Oh, yeah.
So, you how long did you spend on your dad's boat?
I spent 5 years with him. I spent '99 through '04 when I graduated high school, and then he loaned me some money to get a little shore boat, and that's where I started out.
And how'd you get the permit?
I got it through the same deal.
Which deal?
The loan.
Oh, it was a loan deal. Okay. So you bought your own boat right out of high school.
Yeah.
How was the first season?
First season was terrible, and not really because it was such that I was terrible at the fishing. I had a lot to learn, but blew the transmission almost right away on June 26th.
Oh.
And it was one of the bigger days of Igigik's history as far as like single day catch. It was like 1 million fish came into the district. I set my net, I went to run the net, and fish were just hitting it like crazy, and all of a sudden I have no forward drive anymore. And we go down to investigate it, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong in here. And the transmission had fluid in it, everything looked fine. But there was nothing. So we blew the gear, and had to call one of the group members to come get me back to my net, and I just kind of picked it and set it, and picked it and set it, and rode it until someone would tow me in at the very end. And it ended up being like a 17,000 pound average day or something like that.
That's a great day.
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge, and we ended up with like 6,400 pounds or something like that. But we still kept fishing.
Yeah.
As long as we could. And then we got towed up to Naknek, and I was out for about a week or at least 7 days, because we had to switch over from an old Newage gear to a ZF, and it was I still remember it was a ZF 260. You remember the old Pilot we used to have for Trident? Clint,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
My transmission came over from North Naknek on his plane, and I had to carry it down the side of his plane and off and onto the ground there. And I remember it just being super heavy. And then we got it over to Brad Markson and Dan, and they got us all set up. And later on, they kept the transmission and went through it and did a little investigation, and they determined that a little keyway just came out, and it worked its way all the way through the transmission. So it was just a straight up mechanical failure.
Did you get it repaired as a backup? Or?
No, it was junk.
Oh,
yeah,
it chewed it up.
Yeah, Dan said it was just toast.
So, what about the rest of that year? I mean, how did this?
So we went back to fishing. We didn't really
First-time captain, first-time crew.
Yeah, all of that. But my deck boss was also a deckhand with me on my dad's boat. And then we picked up another guy who we had known from just growing up around, Lakewood, Stanwood area. And he wanted to go on. He thought it'd be fun. And he had a year of experience with another boat. I think it was the Donalia at the time. And so he hopped on. His name's Stacy. And we made a go out of it. We had just over 105,000 pounds for the season, and missing a lot of it. I know that everybody else, they slayed us in 05 because it was a big year that year. But you do what you can, and you can't really fault yourself for missing all that harvest and everything like that. But at the same time, that you would have done a lot better, and so it kind of bothers you a little bit. Mm-hmm. You're just like, man, we missed out on all that. That sucks, and you need it. You've got debt, and you want to get this paid off, and you want to make some money, and that year pretty much netted zero, after everything.
Maybe that was a good lesson for you, because you're kind of known as like one of the guys in the fleet that just has his boat in top-notch shape. You go through everything.
Maybe that's part of it. Yeah.
You go through everything, and you're there early and you're ready.
Well, you're just fearful. I think in my mind I have a little mental checklist where I'm like, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. So I just want to make sure that I'm checking every system and going over it more than once. Mm-hmm. And so I'll spend way too much time doing that, and I'll just be even just oiling random things that I don't want to corrode. Mm-hmm. Just so I can tell if something's leaking. So yeah, I mean, you might be right about that. It could have created a mental issue.
All right, so how long were you on that boat?
Had that boat from 05 through 2011, and then we sold that boat and moved over to that Kwijak, which was called the Chaloupe when I bought it, and I named it after my wife. I called it the Holly V, and so that was the start of that naming convention there. Mm-hmm. That boat treated me really well. In fact, I just talked to a guy that bought it, and he was going through some spare parts that he got from the previous owner. It's two owners after me now, and he's got nothing but good things to say about it too.
Yeah. Well, your boat's taken care of.
Yeah.
What's been your best year?
Best year?
I mean, you're the Highliner up there, right?
Sure.
So,
I mean, it really depends. Like, there's the poundage year, 22, where we had the big poundage, but then we had 2023 where we had a really high percentage of our catch to the fleet. So I mean, it really depends on what you call best. Fortunately, both years I got laid off by canneries at the end of the season before I could even determine what our ceiling for poundage would have been.
Right.
Which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I get it. There's politics. There's guys out there. Won't mention names, but they don't want you out there catching the fish that they think belongs to them. So they'll end up getting you fired from their canneries, and it makes you think about your strategy moving forward. I'm a Trident boat, but Trident doesn't buy fish super late.
Yeah, no,
and
that's a fact.
Sometimes that can be a problem, as you can tell getting laid off when you're still catching pretty decent fish late is not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Especially when, like we're just talking about, you're trying to set records. And I don't even so much know that you're really trying to set the record. It feels good when you know you're doing the best.
Is that what it is? Because you're driven.
Well, that's the thing, so in 22, for instance, my crew and I, we had this synergy going on where we didn't know, but we kind of had a really good idea that it would be really hard to be doing better than what we were doing. I mean, we were just loading that boat twice a day, every single day.
What's your, let's go back. Let's not talk about what your biggest season was, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to give that number out. But what's your biggest day? What's
Biggest
the pounds
day?
on a biggest?
I mean, that's not really what I'm good at. I'm consistent. But there's
I don't know about that.
There's guys that will put 50,000 pounds on a boat and go and deliver, and I've never done that. I mean, I've delivered 32,000 pounds, which is pretty good, and I think we've delivered 30 maybe twice a day before.
Okay, so you've had a 60,000 pound day.
Yeah, but there's boats that have done much better than that. In fact, I think Robert he's got the Okuma now. He had the Toonses. And I know things were way different back then, but he had some like ungodly, like legendary day.
Yeah.
Where there was like a helicopter involved, he was in paper, there was a photo.
Wow.
I mean, that's where the intrigue is. Mm-hmm. That's where, that's a legend now. And he's living. So it's crazy.
What's been your best day on the water?
Best day?
Best experience.
Best experience?
Yeah.
I think the best experience is we had a day in 2022 where we went and we were fishing the South Line in Igiugig, and that was kind of where my bread and butter was all the way through my career until 2017 when it kind of started to peter off there, and you had to start you had to learn how to actually be a fisherman after that and grow up a little bit and explore different options. Otherwise, you weren't gonna be highlining anymore. So I go down there, and it had been good the day before, so we went and tried it one more time. We didn't get jack. And I had kind of gotten a little bit of a whisper that there was something going on up north, but I had no idea how crazy it was. So it was rough. We tried to get up there as quick as we could, but it was one of those things where if you go too hard, you're just going to pound real hard. And we get up there, and I'm seeing boats. They're picking some fish, and I get up to the line on the north line, and I can see just like nothing but jumpers. We get there right at tide change. It's kind of just like dumb luck,
Slack.
Yeah. And there's just nothing but fish jumping as far as I can see. And everybody's got fish in there now. So we just got to the buffet line, and we're the only ones there. So I make my first set. It's like 20-something thousand pounds. And, the guys are like, wow, this really saved our day.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it did. But here's what we got to do. We're running out of time because we wasted, almost the entirety of the opening down on the South Line in Igiugig. We get up here. We have less than 3 hours left. We just picked a 20,000 pound set, and these guys are I swear they're the fastest pickers that probably have ever been on a boat up there. They got that 20,000 pounds out in about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. We had to stop picking it because we were starting to sink in the rear because we couldn't get them down as fast as we were getting them. And so we had to stop picking and start pitching them into the bags, throw them up against the house because, the Holly V's not a very big boat. And so we get those in there, and then I'm like looking at it and I'm trying to time what's going on. I'm like, man, we don't really have enough time to get this net in. Why don't we just stern haul the rest of it? There's about 50 fathoms of net out there, and there's probably 5,000 pounds or better of fish in it because they're still hitting it. But we got a net in front of us. We need to get up, and try and make the best of it. So we get that thing in there. We set 150 back up in front of everybody again, and then stern hauled it with about 20 minutes left, just so you're like careful. You don't want to be pushing it, but when you start with 20 minutes left and you realize how much fish you can hit a net that quickly, it can take a while to pull it in. So we ended up getting that thing in there, and I think we had like 32,000 pounds or something like that.
Can you explain to our listeners what happens if you don't have your net in time?
Yeah, you'll get a ticket. You'll get, the troopers will come out and they'll usually buzz you at the end of periods. They buzz the lines, make sure everybody's got their net in, and if you don't, they'll come take some pictures of you, and you'll end up getting a citation, and you'll either pay the fine or go to court and try and fight it, and it usually always ends one way. So
Their way.
yeah, typically.
What's been your worst day on the water?
Worst day? There's a lot of bad days out on the water. I think the actual worst day, it's pretty difficult to sum up. I've seen a lot of weird things. I've seen my parents' boat aflame and watch them jump off onto I can't remember Art's last name. He was running some aluminum boat, I want to say, but it was all kind of a blur. He's got a nice Loyalist, I think, now. You might know him.
I know the boat.
Yeah, I know him. In person. I've talked to him a few times now, and kind of went over the steps that occurred that day because when something crazy like that happens, things can kind of unfold oddly, and then you don't have a very good memory or reference of it later on, and that's kind of what happened. So I want to say that they hopped off onto his boat and then they jumped onto mine, and I brought him over to a tender, one of the Trident tenders, Persevere maybe, with Jody, and then went back to fishing again. So that was a pretty bad day, but bad things happen all the time, so it's kind of difficult to say which is the worst. My second season I almost sunk in Iggy Gig. That was pretty crazy. Just one of those
What
things.
happened there?
Well, you're trying to get your net in before you get to the line, right? And it was really nasty. It was blowing a westerly. We were in the 110 line in Iggy Gig, and I was right about, there's like a little bar out there that I was getting really close to, trying to get my net in. So I was in a cockpit boat, not flush deck, with the Kinesia, and we were taking waves over the back. And at one point, we took one that was so big that it just filled the whole boat. And now we're on bottom. And so we're like thinking, do we get into our survival suits? And we called for help. We're like, hey, we're sinking. We got the net in, but we're in trouble. And so Johnny Mavar showed up first. He had the windsong, I believe, at the time. And he hooked a bow line up to us, and he kind of tugged on us to keep our bow down so we weren't, doing one of these little deals where you're teetering with your stern. But we're on bottom. Luckily, the tide's gone out so far that, the boat can't really go down. But, so there was that. We ended up getting the deck hose down there and sucking it all out.
Did you had to sit through the tide?
No.
Oh, you got off the bottom?
No, yeah, we were good. Yeah. We quit fishing for that period, though. So, I recall, one of my deckhands, Stacy, he was not really digging that, and I understood. I didn't push the envelope like we should go back out. Would I have? Yeah, probably. But we didn't.
What advice would you have for young folks trying to think about getting into the industry right now?
That's a tough one.
Are your kids going to fish?
I think they will, but I'm not going to force them to do it. It's gonna be a decision that they're going to make. If they want to do something else, great.
Unless they get in trouble in 6th grade?
I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to figure that one out when we get there. Yeah, I just I don't know. I don't know that the passion can be always built out of punishment. Maybe I'm just a different story, but I don't know. It's it's tough to say.
You see yourself doing this for a while?
Oh, absolutely, for a very long time. For the new guys, it's hard to find a good crew right now. So if you're a really hard, tough, driven youngster that wants to do good in the bay, or every fishery, I think now you can't just hop onto a single fishery like this and expect to make a living out of it. I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
But
well, unless you own the boat, right?
Exactly. But getting to that point, I think is what we're talking about right now. I know a lot of guys that have had a lot of success in Bristol Bay, and I'm one of them. Everything I own, everything I've ever bought, sold, it's all Bristol Bay money. I've done nothing else, and I'm proud of that. Some people think it's a joke, like you should be doing more, or that you're somehow lesser because you're not, participating in other fisheries or, I suppose what I'm trying to say is put all your eggs in one basket. How are you supposed to be successful doing that, right? Well, if you're careful and you're good with your money and invest back into your business and you're competitive, I think it's still an option.
You said it's hard to get good help.
It really is.
So it's easy to get crew, but hard to get good crew.
Yeah.
What's different?
I don't know. It could be, obviously, we had a price collapse recently. We had a 50-cent year. I remember my crew, a veteran crew, being very upset about it. And namely, we're out there fishing. It's towards the end of the season. But Trident comes out and announces it. And then I want to say it was around July 15th or something like that. They announced the price. We all hear it's 50 cents, and we're out there fishing. And the price drops. People start talking. I remember one of my group members complaining. He's got tenders and stuff. He doesn't need the fishery like guys like I do. And he's complaining about the price. And he says, I'm done. I'm quitting. I'm not going to give them any more fish. And then, one of my deckhands says, why are you out here giving Trident more fish when they're not paying us any money for them? It's a joke. And I said, well, buddy, this is all I got. And I got 4 kids at home. So I've really got no other choice. And we're still catching a ton of fish here. It's pretty early July, halfway through July. Mm-hmm. And, it was really unsettling for a lot of the guys. So I think that's part of it. There hasn't been a lot of money since 22. We got paid a lot and had a ton of fish. I think everybody got really spoiled that year, right? Then the next year you had the price collapse, and not everybody caught a lot of fish. But, we did really well. So I tried to, reason with everybody. It's like, look, man, like, you're still going to make a lot of money this year. And, yeah, it sucks if the price is down. Because believe me, I mean, as much as it affects you, I generally take a larger share, so it affects me even more. Mm-hmm. But, so we went through the price collapse again. And if you account for CPI, we're not looking too pretty at 50 cents in Bristol Bay. Mm-hmm. It's pennies.
And that makes it harder to get those qualified personnel.
Yeah, no one wants to go on a bay boat, And then crab prices have been pretty good, recently. So guys are really liking their crab jobs right now. And I had a guy quit during the peak of 2024 to go tendering.
For a flat day rate.
Just for it, yeah. Well, that was the excuse. Who's to say it would actually ever happen? But I did drop him off on the Sandra 5, which is where he said he was going to go working. So, and then, we hired a new kid, and he was there in a little over a day, which was awesome. And, you can't really thank a guy enough for just showing up. And, even if their, experience is limited, just being there and showing up and being able to I guess, in a sense, really relieve the rest of the crew.
So he made it work?
Yeah. He's coming back this year. His name's Caleb. He's down in Arizona is where he lives. And
was he in Arizona when you hired him?
He was.
He's up there the next day?
Yeah, he flew up within about 24 hours.
Wow.
Couldn't believe it.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. How'd you find him?
Found him through a deckhand on my back deck named JD. And they're about the same age. I think they're about 22,
so like
23.
Friend of his or something?
Yeah. They both fished on the Northern Fury this season past. And so when we were having the issue, with the guy wanting to leave, we were, kind of spitballing, figuring out what we were going to do as a team. Who are we going to hire? How are we going to get somebody out here? Mm-hmm. Even with how connected we are now, it's kind of a scramble. You're like, geez, what do you do? Right? So he locates him, and then my deck boss, Jake, he goes inside and starts talking to him on the cell phone, gets him a ticket. He's like, don't worry about it. We got everything up here that you need. We'll order whatever else, and just show up with a crew license. And so he shows up, Trident flew him out to they flew him out to the Maid, and then from the Maid, he took a tender down to the South Line. We ended up picking him up. Yeah. Worked out great.
Delivery.
I mean, that service is good.
Yeah. Well, Trident's known for being, I think most seafood companies up there, you have to be honest.
That's the thing. There's typically been, kind of like I don't know. All the markets like to kind of talk about how good their service is. I haven't been with one yet that has really been poor, but I also fish pretty late with a lot of the other markets, so it's tough to say what your in season would be like. But talking to your friends, like, hey, how's the service over at Silver Bay? Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
How's the service over at Red Salmon? It's wonderful. Sometimes it might seem like Red Salmon boats get paid a little less than us, so that that would be one reason why you kind of talk up Trident or Silver Bay, because they seem to pay more. Silver Bay seems to recently been kind of paying the most in the last 5 years, but I was talking to one of my group boats, the sluice box, Kyle Gleason. He said that Silver Bay might be behind Trident right now. I don't know how true that is.
Oh, I haven't heard that at all.
Yeah, I have nothing to back it, but if it's true, that should feel pretty good to our managers, right? And after our
I don't know. I've been with Trident an awful long time.
Yeah, I haven't fished for anybody else until they're not buying. So
I got like majority of my clothes say Trident on them, dude.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I've got a jacket. I wear Trident hats. I mean, like this guy right here.
Well, what about any final thoughts? Anything you'd like the world to know?
Well, just in general about Bristol Bay, or
any thoughts you have, man? Anything you'd want to impart on us? You love the life.
I definitely love it. I think it's great. Like I told you, I've built a life on it, and I'm going to continue to do it until I can't. I like the freedom that it's given me. I like the the whole package. You get a whole year to decide what you're going to do next year. You keep it, tighten your process. You plan for next year as soon as that one's finished.
You stay on top of it too, right? You wait for the release, the forecast.
Yeah, exactly.
You study it. You study them.
Exactly. Study the forecast. I mean, as soon as we're done fishing, I'm doing boat surveys for only Bristol Bay boats.
Do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're going to start next year? You don't got to say the river.
Oh, this year?
Yeah, this year.
I think everybody's going to attempt to start in the niche. And to say that you weren't going to do that, I mean, you have your diehard idiot guys that are going to do the same thing no matter what.
Yeah.
Same with Ugashic.
The Ugashic crew's like they're just the Ugashic crew.
Yeah. You got to go, I guess, where the fish are, right? And then adjust your season from there. There's always a sleeper though. Like last year, Igigik was the sleeper river. I think all the big seasons came out of there. Mm-hmm. Unless you did really well. I know a couple of boats that did the hop around that timed things a little bit better than we did, and they were rewarded as such. Mm-hmm. But there were no big seasons last year. No like 400s or anything like that, as far as I know. But they still did pretty well considering. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, David. Thanks for taking the time to share with us today.
Yeah, I hope it turns into something good for you here.
Good. All right. Well, I'll definitely be seeing you in the bay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, guys. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.